Already.
Almost
Yeah.
4.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here for the fourth webinar of Teaching the Next Gen webinar series. And I welcome everyone for this webinar, which is, I feel, a the webinar. I want to just remind everyone regarding the rules. Please make sure that your videos are shut off or switched off during the webinar, as well as your audios will be muted. Please feel free to send any questions to us using the Zoom chat or the YouTube chat. We have a team monitoring the chat windows, and we will make sure that your questions are sent to the speakers, and they will address your questions at the end of their talk. With that, let me introduce today's webinar speaker, Dr. Neeraja Raghavan. Dr. Neeraja Raghavan is a founder director of Thinking Teacher. She has a doctorate degree in chemistry from Princeton University, and her last position was professor at Azim Premji University. She has worked with Azim Premji Foundation for quite a long time, and mainly in the field of science education, she has taught various several mainstream as well as alternative schools in India, and has been a principal for a couple of those schools. And she developed an alternative middle school science curriculum for Shiksha Mitra, or a school for slum children, in 2007. She has also developed the middle school science curriculum for the school Krishnamurti Foundation India, Chennai, uh, in March to May 2006, so as to suit their unique needs and ethos. Development through reflective practices. And as I said, reflective practices are must for any teacher, no matter what subject you're teaching and what school or what standard you're teaching or to whom you're teaching. So we are really glad to have Neeraja Raghavan here, Dr. Neeraja Raghavan. Thank you for joining. Hope that this is going to be a great webinar. We are all excited for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And this is a subject it's very close to my heart. So I'm very grateful for this chance. So may I begin right away, Dr. Dasha?
Yes.
So I'm going to share my screen. How do I make this? So good afternoon to everyone. And this is the topic. I hope you can see my screen. Reflective practices in teaching. And I'm going to share with you today some examples of what has. But before I do that, I want to begin with our pre-webinar poll. We had circulated 3 questions, and we're very happy we got some 377 responses. So I'm going to run through those 3 questions first, and we'll look at your responses. The question was, during your student days, how many of your teachers would you say taught you mechanically in a repetitive or uninspiring fashion? The 377 responses listed like this. 23% said just 1 or 2. 15% said almost all. And 11% said none. Lucky 11% who didn't have a single teacher who taught them in a repetitive or uninspiring fashion. I myself had many. The next question was, as a teacher, how often do you think your students find your classes mechanical, repetitive, or boring? And here, of 377 responses, we got 43% of the respondents said less than 10% of the time. So obviously these 377 are a very vibrant bunch of teachers. If less than 10% of the time, your students found your classes mechanical, repetitive, or boring. 28% said about 10 to 30% of the time this happens. 30 to 60% of the time, we have a small sliver here. And I really don't know, a large percentage, 22.5% said, I really don't know. So I wondered if it is worth knowing. This 22.5%, I would like to ask, do you think it's worth knowing how often your students find your classes mechanical, repetitive, or boring? And to the others, I would just like to ask, how do you know this? Have you actually asked them? Or is it your sensing? Sensing could be accurate. I'm not belittling sensing. A teacher often senses the atmosphere, the vibes. But I'm just curious. The third question was, okay, I can't see now because this thing is, yeah. Do you think it's possible for an experienced teacher to transform his from a mechanical or repetitive one to an interesting, inspiring one? So the key word here was experience, meaning even after years of teaching, do you think it's possible for a teacher to complete? And in the 377 responses, 85, almost 86% said it's definitely possible. 12.7% said occasionally it's possible. And a small number said, I really don't know. Totally impossible. I don't see anyone saying that. So it's very heartwarming to know that 85.7% have said definitely possible. And again, I'm curious, it's a belief, or it's a belief based on actual experience. You've seen experienced teachers transform their teaching practice even after years of teaching. Yeah, if somebody raised their hand, we'll come to you in the end. Thank you. So having gone through those responses, I would like you to draw your attention to a research paper on our website, which actually describes the journey of one experienced teacher amongst many, whose action research thinking teacher facilitated, and she actually transformed her practice. So now I begin my presentation with the question, why should a teacher reflect? So my first reason is the repetitive nature of a teacher's job. It lends itself easily to falling into a set behavior pattern. You know, we as teachers, we usually have a certain syllabus, a certain textbook, some prescribed content, a timetable. And as we teach the same thing year after year after year to batches of students, we can become so efficient about it. We become so practiced at it that we become repetitive. We don't need to think about it. However, just a bit of reflection can turn things around. If you are not convinced, I will be offering you some. My fellow teachers who are going to be speaking today, I hope they will convince you. I also want to ask, when a teacher reflects, don't you think students may also begin to reflect? And isn't that what we want? And the opposite of it is, if a teacher does not reflect at all, do you think any student is going to begin to reflect? I'll leave you with that question. But I do understand that as teachers, the question may be popping up in many. After all, as a teacher, my tasks include lesson planning, lesson transaction, assessment, evaluation design, checking answer sheets, writing reports, attending staff meetings, meeting parents. Now, as if all that is not enough, as a teacher, I also have to plan events like assemblies, annual days, exhibitions. I have to prepare students to participate in these events. I have to supervise extracurricular activities like the school magazine, this club, that club. Sometimes I have to even substitute for absent teachers. Of course, I have to prepare students for the board exams. And today's online era, In addition to all this, I have to upload videos, I have to conduct online classes, I have to juggle between household work and online sessions because I'm sitting at home and doing all this work. And I'm straining my eyes all the time with the screen time. So if you are asking, now where do you want to, asking a very valid question. And I hope I can convince you it's not an added task. So you may wonder why I've got a picture here of somebody playing the tanpura. I'm trying to use a metaphor here. The metaphor and that is the tanpura. That is deciding the pitch, the scale. And the singer or the performer has this all the time playing in their ears. And that determines the notes which they will align to. It is only when the performer pauses in between that we, the audience, actually notice, there's a tanpura playing. Otherwise, we don't notice it. Similarly, I think reflective practice should be like this background scale. What do I mean? We should be asking ourselves, as teachers, we should be asking ourselves questions like this. Why is it important for students to learn whatever I'm going to teach? Apart from the fact that it's in the syllabus, it's in the textbook, is there any real reasonable excuse I can give them if they ask me, teacher, why do I have to learn this? I mean, how am I going to use this? So we have to ask ourselves these questions first as teachers. When is it best for them to learn it? We need to think about such things. How did my class go today? Why wasn't I getting the attention of many students in today's class? What did I assume about my students? What took me by surprise today? And that's when I realized, I made this assumption. When do I believe that learning happens best? And if you think you don't have any such belief, you probably have not just articulated it yet. Because whatever we do by way of a teaching practice is definitely stemming from some belief, some philosophy we hold, which we may not have articulated yet, but we have it. And this is all there in the background. Where can I go to develop better communication skills? As a teacher, we have to keep communicating all the time. How can I, refine that? How can I engage with parents of my students instead? So we don't become a teacher versus parent battle. We both work together for the growth of the child. What can we do to enliven staff meetings? So if questions like this are churning in the back of my mind as a teacher, when the performance pauses, I will hear the questions in the background, just like the tanpura is heard when the musician stops for a minute. And hopefully it will create enough disturbance in me for me to think about it. And I don't think I need to have you guess. No question like this ever bothered me. We would be part of that percentage of teachers in your pre-webinar poll who you said were teaching mechanically, repetitively, in a boring manner. So now I'd like to share with you that to draw out this kind of reflective practice in a teacher. The first is called action research, and I will be explaining to you what that means. The second, reflective writing. And the third, we've designed a sort of board game. I will be telling you about each of these in some detail. But to satisfy those who are wondering, where do I fit this into my day, which is already so loaded, I just want to clarify right at the start that action research is something that can be done during the course of the workday. We offer now as an online course. Earlier, we used to offer it as a face-to-face. And it's just 2 one-hour sessions weekly. And there's a homework assignment in each session. You will hear more about this from people who've taken the course. And lastly, we also offer a game for teachers to play at their own convenience. And 2 days a week, they have to invest 20 minutes for about 5 weeks. So having said that, let me first begin to describe what we mean by action research. In action research, the first thing a teacher does is to identify a problem that he or she wishes to solve. Having identified that problem, they have to follow a framework like this. Very simple, commonsensical framework. It's the basic action research model. We make a plan, we formulate a plan through which we are going to solve that problem. Having formulated the plan, we act on it. As we are acting, whether the plan is working, not working, why could it be working, why could it not be working, and finally, we reflect on it. And this is a cyclic process because we are sure to find some things to our satisfaction and some things not quite to our satisfaction. So then we go back and plan, and if it's not really making sense, don't worry. We're going to have one of our teachers share with you exactly what they did. But before that happens, let me share with you the steps in action research in a little more detail. You can find more information on this website. So as I said, we first identify a problem, and then we try to analyze the problem so that we understand it to some depth. Having understood it, we identify different strategies to tackle the problem. Having identified different strategies, we select one and implement that because one can only do one strategy at a time. As we are implementing the strategy, we try and observe how it is working. Is it working, not working, what's happening? And then we reflect on the whole process, and whatever is still left to be identified, we again identify that problem and go through the whole cycle all over again. So for example, some possible problems which teachers have worked on, whose action research we have helped facilitate. Some teachers have said, I want to find different ways of teaching this particular concept. I find my students are getting bored with just the standard way. I want different ways of teaching it. Someone else says, I want to learn how to manage my classroom better. I'm not able to get the attention of all my students. So I need better ways of classroom management. Another teacher said, I've suddenly been made a mentor. I was just a teacher. Now my management has said I'm a mentor. So how do I don this new role? I need to do action research on this. It's a problem for me. Somebody else said, I want to enhance the quality of staff meetings. They are becoming very functional and dull and boring. So I want to do something to make them lively. And someone else said, I'm teaching science, but I find my students, they're not asking a single question. What do I do to ignite the fire of curiosity in my students? That's my action research problem. And some others said, you know, I'm just so scared of this, that, and the other. As a teacher, for all the time attacking me that I'm not doing my job, or I'm scared of my management. I'm not sure if they are happy with my work, or I'm just scared of going and standing in front of a class of 40 and 30. I have a lot of stage fear. I don't know how to overcome this. So I'm just giving you an example of the kind of problems which teachers could have. There could be a whole host of others. So now we are going to have our poll. And before we start our poll, I'm going to explain to you why you have to pick any one of these. What is this? I want you to pick one burning issue out of the choices I'm giving you. And you may resonate with more than one. But here's your challenge. You have to pick one, which is your most burning issue. Maybe it's the pedagogy. Maybe you're wondering how to teach your subject better. That's your burning issue. You're not happy with the way you're teaching it right now, and you want to find livelier ways of teaching it. Then pedagogy is your burning issue. Maybe it's children are just unmanageable in your class. So then classroom management is your burning issue. Maybe it's this new avatar of online teaching, taking classes online, and you still want to be in touch with your students as a dedicated teacher. Maybe that's your burning issue. Student achievement. You want to prepare your students for the board exam. And you're very tense, you're very anxious about it. As a concerned teacher, you want your students to do well. Maybe it's fear, like what I mentioned, fear of this whole new technology maybe. Maybe it's fear of just facing all your have just about any fear that interferes with our work. And if it's none of these, not pedagogy, not classroom management, not online teaching, not student achievement, not fear. I request Nirija, whoever it is from your side, to please post the poll so that our participants, thank you. Can you please vote? Quite a few for pedagogy. Online teaching, we have quite a bit. Student achievement, quite a bit. About 66% have voted. Can I request the others to vote fast so that we can look at the results? So there are about 15% already in any other. So maybe towards the end, we can find out what comes under any other. Looks like student achievement in tests is the winner. That's the burning issue for most people. So 72% seem to have voted. I'm going to end the polling here because we've spent more than a minute. Share results. Okay. So we've got pedagogy 22%, classroom management 8%, online teaching 24%. Winner is student achievement in tests, fear 5%, and any others quite significant. Okay, so we can talk a little more about this towards the end. That was quite interesting. Can I close this now?
Yes, it's closed.
It's closed. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for participating in the poll. So now I'm going to share with you some work that we did at Thinking Teacher with teachers who did action research. And here I would like to acknowledge Azim Premji Foundation because this work was done while I was working with Azim. Action research of 7 teachers, and these teachers were working in the Azim Premji School in Uttarakhand. And just to give you an example of the kind of action research problems they worked on, one teacher wanted to improve the English vocabulary of her students. Another, to students who are not comfortable in the medium of instruction. The medium of instruction in Uttarakhand, as you know, is Hindi. But those children, a few children in that class did not have Hindi as their mother tongue. They spoke Bangla. So this teacher wanted to teach EVS in such a way that those students understood. But this teacher didn't want to become a teacher. So that was the action research problem. Yet another teacher said, I want to teach science in a way that students begin asking lots of questions. Right now, that's not happening. A couple of teachers who were doing team teaching of math, they found there were some students in the 6th grade who did not even know place value. So that was their action research. They said, we want to teach this mixed class without ignoring those who know place value or ignore them so that we teach at the required level for 6th grade. And yet another teacher improved the Hindi reading and comprehension of his students. So if you read section 2 of this book, you will get an idea of how these teachers went about solving their action research problems. But most fascinating, one of the most fascinating things is solving the problem is, of course, a big source of satisfaction. But you know, the thinking of the teacher when it changes, That's the true fruit of action research. One teacher with 17 years experience, she wrote, before doing action research, my focus used to mainly be on completing the syllabus. But while doing action research, I realized that far more important than completing or not completing the syllabus is to find out how much each child has learned. Teaching, if she realizes action research has really borne fruit. I would like to now invite my friend and colleague, Sudha Ravi, who had the privilege of facilitating her action research some years ago. And before I invite her, I would like to introduce her to you. Sudha Ravi has been a teacher for more than 2 decades in schools across the country. For the last 16 years, she has been a teacher with Prakriya Green Wisdom School, which is an alternative. She held roles like the coordinator of the primary school, headmistress of the primary and nursery school. She was instrumental in designing and co-creating natural and holistic learning spaces for children and teachers. She's a storyteller. She weaves in stories from mythology, folk, spirituality, and culture in facilitating self-level exploration for adults and children. So I'm going to, should I stop sharing now, Neeraja, so that we can see Sudha and me?
Yes.
So welcome, Sudha.
Thank you so much, Neeraja. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So Sudha, I would just like you to share with us first, what was your overall experience like doing action research?
Yeah, I think to begin with, I really liked the metaphor of the Tampura, which is fantastic. That you need to have that pause. In terms of my experience, I think something which really stood out for me was that it was very reflective, not just in the externals, but it also kind of helped me join the dots with what is happening within me. So it was not just, me acting on something, but there was also me part of the journey. And I also, I think I really valued the whole journey because people were not just resource for data. They were also part of the journey of my action research, especially the fact that I would have what they understood. Just to give you a context, part of the alternative school where we actually were anchored on the nature's principles. And very often there are people who kind of misinterpret or, the whole, I think my action research was also on path, because one could really swing from one extreme to another because nurturing, accepting, and exploration comes very easily. But the whole gamut of demanding accountability, the rigor, the structure, and I think my burning issue was that I really wanted to see how a culture of simultaneity could be built in. So I think I really enjoyed because I was also part of the journey, and it helped me also look at certain structural rigor in myself too. Yeah.
Thank you. So just to clarify to some of our viewers, in alternative schools, quite often the first casualty is rigor, because many teachers who join, they have a certain notion about an alternative school that everything is just fun and play. So Sudha really focused on how to balance. Yes, fun and play is important, but also how do you balance that with rigor? Don't throw rigor out of the window. So Sudha, maybe you could clarify also that you said you spoke to a number of people as part of your journey. So maybe you need to clarify that your role allowed you to do that, or is it? Yeah. What was your role at that time?
So I think just to add to the context, we also have a vertical age group in our school, and because of which there are multiple levels in each class, and you're engaging with children of different learning styles also. So the whole understanding of the teacher, of the levels, these were the complexities. And I think in my role as a coordinator and headmistress, I think that was one luxury I had, where I could actually engage with the teachers, bring about structural changes and things like that. All did help. And I just want to add one more thing, Nirja, the documentation. I think the documentation of the whole process was very valuable, because it also helped in bridging gaps between what one would assume. And also, if I look back, it helps people who joined in new to kind of, go through what was the process, what happened, because we've come a long way into, these, the vertical age group and things which we've implemented. So definitely a great journey. And I would really recommend that people, as teachers, we need to take that pause and reflect. Thank you, Nirja.
Thank you, Sudha. So if I can just recap what you said, doing action research is of value. Documenting it is of second value. I mean, that adds to the process. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So one last question, Sudha, is a little bit of an ambitious question, which is, did it alter any of your beliefs or attitudes or practices in a sustained way? Or did it last only during that action research?
Yeah, I think the whole impact of the action research was it didn't stop at my profession. It also came into the personal life. But if I have to look at the cyclical aspect of it, I think what you brought in, it had to follow through. So that happens only when, the documentation is available, when linear begin and end kind of a journey. So to set things in process, I think the documentation helped a lot. Yeah. So
if I recall,
an important aspect.
Right, yeah, you also did manage to initiate some facilitating of action research with some of your colleagues.
As much as I learned the style of action research through the process of my journey, and I found that when I was facilitating teachers in terms of their challenges in facilitating, in terms of looking at the bridge between assessment and planning and a whole lot of other things, I use the same approach from a top-down thing to say, okay, do this, and by issue and identifying it, consolidating that and working on it, I think really helped in working with others.
Thank you so much, Sudha. Thank you. Please stay with us, because I'm sure there'll be Q&A for you towards the end.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to continue sharing my presentation. It doesn't start. Oh. So having talked about action research, now I'll go on to the second method that we try, which is we offer a course called Reflective Writing for Teachers. What is this? We have 10 online nowadays in our online avatar. We have 10 online classes for teachers, where a batch of 10 teachers together with me read, discuss, reflect, and write. And we dip into readings by writers like John Holt, Parker J. Palmer, Tara Westover. We listen to TED Talks. We watch short clips. We read newspaper middles. We talk about student issues. We delve into parental concerns. We even read a couple of report cards, which have been just devised for that. We talk about our teachers' dilemmas and we share different perspectives. We listen to each other read aloud our writings. And you can find more at this link. But better still, you should hear it from someone who's done the course. So before I invite Anissa Jamal to share her experience of reflective writing, she's one of the many who's done the course, I would like to introduce her to you. Anissa Jamal is an alumna of Smith College, USA, and an MBA from the University of Washington. She founded and currently heads Al-Kamar Academy, which is an innovative micro school in Chennai. This school creates real learning spaces for children through its Montessori and alternative education approach. Anissa handles pedagogy and new program development at Alkamar. She also conducts training and workshops for educators. So I have to escape this, right? How do I stop sharing? It's not showing me the control. Ah, right. So Anissa, may I invite you please to share with us your overall experience of the reflective writing course to begin with. Firstly, welcome and thank you for accepting our invitation to share.
Thank you, Neja. Really honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me. So, yeah, I was the first batch, I think, of the course that you launched.
Online version, yes.
Online version. And it really provided me, there's something on my screen. Yeah, the course was very transformative because it provided me with a very different lens of looking at my own teaching and also my management practices, right? So the way the course was structured was, as you said, a lot of articles, and the articles are of increasing complexity. And then we would have these discussions, and then we would write. And each I think because we were doing it during lockdown, it was an intense version. You know, we were having class almost every second day, and we were writing every day. So it was really good. But it really forced me to re-examine a lot of stuff that, I've just taken for granted. And we got a lot of support from Neja because she scaffolded our learning, the basic tools of mind mapping, how to write, steps of reflective writing, how to use loads of time going through our work. And I remember those red marks, correcting the work, which was very critical feedback from a extremely experienced practitioner. So I really benefited from that, and I think all of us did. And but for me, the biggest part that was of value was the peer and the self-evaluation, because that itself was reflective. See, it was not just reflecting on the writings and the readings, but the process of getting feedback from you, from the peers, and from my own self. It was actually what made it real. Yeah. It also helped me as a teacher to see how students take feedback. It's very easy for us as teachers to just pen off anything, but really when you are under the lens, you see a very different perspective. So that really helped me. And I was really happy that it was a godsend.
Thank you.
We are so busy to give this course. Yeah. Just a couple of these things. I felt it could be a lot longer, Nija, because this is a transformation process. And, so maybe this is not for you, but this is for us as teachers and management to think about ensuring courses like this happen all the time. And they keep happening at repeated intervals so that people don't fall into the rut of things. We're constantly snatched out of it.
Yes, yes. So, Anissa, can I ask you, what have you observed in teachers of your school who've taken this course? Because more than one teacher from your school has taken this course. Yes. Is there anything you observed?
So, yeah, I'll just give a couple of points.
Voice is fading away. Can you come closer to the mic?
So, I think a couple of things. So, eventually, we're going to see the benefit longer term, not right now. And us all to take the level 2 and level 3s, because this is not something that ends in one day. It has to go on. But I think 2-3 things. One is, as a Montessori school, we have something called observation already there. So teachers are expected to observe students and how they're working. But yourself and asking really important questions. So teachers don't have that kind of time usually. So I think for me, the learning was we need to institutionalize this process. So we need to make sure that time and space is given to teachers within the school day, not, go home and do. Encourage them to write blogs, encourage them to talk on WhatsApp, to the teachers meeting. So those are things we did do, with some of the ideas you had given us. And I think that's really been very useful. There's a zero-sum game here. You can't say, I'll put in this and I'll still have my school running the way it is. So as an alternative school, we have the ability to kind of chuck out things like exams and homework and stuff like that, and focus on reflective practice. But it's absolutely essential. It's a core part of teaching. And as a school management, I've benefited because I can see renewed and re-engaged teachers.
Thank you so much, Anissa. Please stay around. I'm sure there'll be questions to you during Q&A. So I'm going to continue with the last part of the presentation. So stories and their power is something I don't think I need to convince any teacher of. As teachers, don't we all keep using stories with our students? So my colleagues and I at Thinking Teacher decided to use stories for teachers. And we wrote this book called Teaching Tales. What is this book? It's a compilation of 10 stories. And they're all stories about the teaching learning scenario in Indian schools. We don't have too many of those. And they're all fictionalized fact. What do I mean by that? We, my colleagues and I have had so many years of experience in schools that we have little stories in our kitty of things which really happened with students, with parents, with colleagues. So we just knitted them together and we wrote stories which are not entirely untrue and are not entirely true. And these stories, we followed them in the second section of the book with a discussion of each story by different stakeholders, meaning we had a Google group of principals, another of teachers, another of teacher educators, another of teacher trainees, another students, and a sixth one of parents. Each Google group read the stories and discussed them. Our idea was to read the story and discuss it, read the second section and discuss it. So the idea was to provoke reflection. Teachers, we find, are reading the stories. We are not sure who's discussing it. So then we went on to devise the third method I talked about, which is we made what we ambitiously call a board game. It's actually a very simple thing. We ask teachers who participate in the game to read a couple of pages at a time from any one particular story. We select one story around which we've designed the game. And we then have 3 cards, which each of these cards, they have to pick up, the team members have to pick up one out of the 3 cards. And then they have to reflect on the question which is contained in that particular card. They share their reflection with their team members. And all this calls from them is 20 minutes a day, twice a week. And it has been piloted. This game has been piloted once. And our learning experience has been that just having them do the reflection is not enough. We should have a Zoom session once a week and talk about it. So we'll do that from the next run. And it's not enough if I tell you about this. I'm going to now invite 2 teachers who played the game. Before I invite them, like I did earlier, I would like to introduce them to you. Vicky Hale is an English language fellow with the US Department of State. She's currently a virtual fellow. She is now working with St. Joseph's College for Women in Visakhapatnam. She's been working there since August 2019. She has an Eminent in teaching English to speakers of other languages and world languages. A Bachelor of Science degree in worked with non-profit organizations in the US and Central Russia. The second person is Prabha Sudarshan, who is a learner and an educator. She is a teacher in Prakriya Green Wisdom School, Bangalore. She's been there for 12 years. She has held roles like coordinator of the primary section, academic coordinator for the primary and pre-primary section. She has helped create natural and holistic learning spaces for children. She's now a biology and chemistry mentor for the high school. She also works closely with the first generation learners to supplement their learning after school hours. So now I'm going to stop share and I would invite both Vicky and Prabha to please turn on their video and come so that we can see you. Can the IISER staff help us see them?
Yes, they're being seen.
Yeah. Okay. And between Vicky and Prabha, I think it's Vicky. Is Vicky going to begin first? May I throw my question to both of you and either of you can begin? My first question is, what was your overall experience while playing the game? Of course, thank you very much, both of you, for joining this session and agreeing to share your experience. So, Vicky and Prabha, what was your overall experience while playing this game?
Well, I know I probably speak for both Prabha and I, but that it's a great pleasure to be with all of you today. And I'm a great advocate of reflective teaching practice, so I couldn't miss it. So the game actually overall helped me to continue after I took the reflective writing for teachers course. Then I continued with the game. And so it helped me to continue to reflect and to looking at situations in the classroom and staff room.
That's very nice. Thank you, Vicky. Prabha, anything?
Actually, no, it's the same thing. We just finished the reflective writing. Excited about the whole thing. I was just telling Nirja that I don't want to stop reflecting now. I want to continue writing. And when she gave this opportunity, I think both Vicky and I, some of us, we just jumped at it and we said, yes, we want to do it. And we just jumped at it. It was all very exciting and it gave us a different, this one. Although for me personally, yes, the excitement did lag a little bit in between because my co-participants, because we were split into groups. And because of that, when the interest was lagging for them, mine will also lag. And then we had to push each other, egg each other on to say, come on, let's just do it. I think it was more group effort rather than just a single person. So it had its own ups and downs because of the group effort over there. But overall, I would say it was a wonderful experience of that 10 questions that we had to 10 rounds of game that we had to play. It was really a good reflective practice. And we also had to write. It was not just back and sitting with whatever thoughts we had to share it with others, and that made it even more enriching for all of us in the whole this one.
So I thank you for that. I'm just wondering, because both of you said that after the reflective writing course, you found that the game helped you continue to reflect. So now my question is, after the game, is there anything still going on in your mind, or has it stopped with the game?
You want me to go, Prabha? I'm going to have to say, well, I'm right now, I'm feeling a little bit guilty. I just wanted to keep reading more of those stories in the book. And then I got too involved in my new classes and writing curriculum. And so I liked the quote unquote pressure of the game because so being a part of the game just helped me continue. So I miss that. And it also made, it made things more relevant to be, to be reflecting on them and thinking about them and sharing the stories with other teachers who my team and such. So I'd like to say that I've just gung-ho kept reading the book and reflecting on the stories, but I haven't. But I want to, because I'm an advocate of reflective teaching.
Thank you.
Actually, what I want to add was, see, all of us think. It's not like none of us think or do anything without thinking. All of us think. But what happens is we also get into one pattern of thinking.
Yes.
So that's because we are used to that pattern.
Yes.
So when these questions were posed, you stop and you pause and you say, oh, I never thought about it from that perspective. I never looked at it from this angle. So it kind of gave you one way to go in a different way. It's like class, you go there and you're very well prepared. You know what, you anticipate all the questions and you go there to the class. And then all of a sudden, one kid sitting in the corner would throw you one question and you're like, huh? I never thought about it that way. And that gives you a different, it gives you a high. It's not like you put down, you're like, oh,
I never looked at it from that perspective. I never expected that question to come from them. So that's what this game kind of gave us, at least to me, that to think about it, I just read this, but I didn't look at it from this perspective. So, so what kind of a thing is? Did it have a lasting effect? I'm sure certain things would become part of you. It is not like you do it. It's not a game you play, right? And you just leave it and move on, because this is part of your life. And the way it is set up is also something like you have the context of the story, and you have your connection to the story, and you also look at it from a larger perspective of going through this. So what happens is this kind of pattern, thinking pattern kind of sets in you. Then anything comes in your way, you start looking at it from multiple perspectives. I think that is what it gives.
And what it did for me, reading the stories in those books, I got some ideas about how to look at the mistakes that my students are making, and how to, and of course, for all of us, we had a little bit, for me, I got to learn more about the Indian classrooms. And then you all got perspectives. Yeah. But it was so great to share. And that's what I really miss. But I do want to say one thing about the name. The board game maybe is not the greatest name, because not everybody likes board games. And it was a little more lively and relevant than that.
What should we call it? Can you think of a better name?
Well, maybe even just the reflective board game, or the reflective game. I think, maybe just something. My husband's first reaction when he hears about a board game,
yes.
He's just so.
Yeah, I get it.
But I really enjoyed being a part of the pilot, and it was a great extension of our class. Everybody always says that at the end of your class, let's make it longer. And so the board game is a great continuation. And so I'm ready for the next round.
Thank you so much. I think what I'm getting methods and all the three sharings is that this is something where a constant nudge is needed. It doesn't just happen through any one technique. And to sustain reflection, there has to be some churning happening within the school, amongst the colleagues. And that process has to become, as one of you said, institutionalized. It cannot always do. But finally, it has to happen within the institution. And that's what schools have to think about.
Absolutely. Making a systemic requirement kind of makes everybody engaged with that, anything. So that gives a different, this one. See, when you were talking about reading the book and whether people reflect on it, although that was the reason why you wrote the book. My whole, this one was, when I read a book, I make a connection with the book, whatever from my own experience, and I move on. I add something to myself and I move on. Whereas re-engaging with that adds perspectives to it. That's what, that was my takeaway from that. Re-engaging, constantly engaging with that, and adding more perspectives, because the same question is posed to multiple people, and you get a different kind of a perspective from them. So that was my whole experience of that.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to come and share our experience with all of you.
Thank you. Please stay around. I'm sure there are going to be questions to you.
Okay.
Sure.
Here we go. So I think we've come to the end. Now we are going to throw it open for questions and answers. These are our contact information. There are many people who've been asking for the presentation in this chat window. And I don't know if you know, but this is going to be on YouTube. And on YouTube, you're going to see the whole presentation. So you don't need to see it separately. Okay. So I throw it open now for question and answer. We're bang on time. We've got 5 minutes to 5. So over to Mr. Dasu.
Yeah, thank you, Neeraja, and thank you everyone amongst the co-teachers who participated and shared their experiences of engaging in these reflective practices. One thing that is coming up in the questions is maybe if you can take one example of a teacher and share their journey of their action research, like in detail, a little more in detail, wherein what was the problem they were facing, how did they go about solving it. It would really help.
Sure. So, Sudha, would you like to? Sudha Ravi? She actually did say briefly, but she can detail it out a bit more.
Yes,
Sudha,
really
yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah.
So just to go into a little more detail of my action research, my concern was like how I did mention that teachers were very comfortable with providing experiences for exploration, for imagination, for different forms of expression, learning. But what would get often, compromised at times would be the formal kind of an expression where you need rigor. You also need to have the structure to learn. Somewhere that wasn't given too much of value. And but the whole and also about deliverables. I think that was another area where children could negotiate and say that, oh, I understood the whole process and everything, and I can tell you the answer. But delivering their work on time in a proper form, I think those kind of things was what I was concerned, that one doesn't have to compromise on rigor and structure in order to have the experience and exploration. I think that was my concern. And it was not that teachers were not committed or anything. I think it was more what they understood about the whole balance between process and product, for lack of a better word. So that was, and then I think through the process, just talking to the teachers, stood by nature's wisdom, was by itself a very explorative kind of thing. And then documenting it, I think that really helped.
And I think many dots you were connecting,
Yes.
connecting the dots happened because you actually had some systems in place. If I remember, you had deliverables there and you had a rubric, but then we connected the two during your action research.
So I think just to add to what Neerja was saying, we often saw that, the lesson plans would be there, very well written. The fact that the two needed to be connected itself was something which was very important. And I think little things like this helping in joining the dots and seeing that they don't have to be structures which are in isolation, but need to kind of be part of a process. I think these were a couple of things which helped in the research.
And the whole thing journey was for about 7 to 8 months. Am I right? So
yes. A little more than that, actually. Yeah.
And then documentation was after that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Apurva, do you have the next question?
Yes, I do. Dr. Neeraja, very interesting to sort of learn about your journey into reflective practices. We have a fair number of questions coming in. And, there are two questions that I'm going to club. One is by what group, and the second is.
Sorry, I can't hear you. What was the first one?
Hello.
I couldn't hear you.
The first question is what is vertical age group? And the second question, which is connected, group of students of vertical age group is always difficult. And I have faced issues like accessing their understanding regarding the subject, etc. Please suggest some good ways to engage them in learning. So, these are the two questions.
So, Sudha Ravi, vertical age group, Sudha? Would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. Vertical age group is basically, where children are not grouped in classes according to their age. Because only in schools we do see that 7-year-olds learn among 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds learn, and in real life it doesn't happen like that. So it is a very natural process that you learn from each other. And we've been almost now for about 7 years, if I'm not mistaken, we've been having the vertical age group. And though we had a rough start, because there is a whole lot of understanding, it is not just putting groups of children. We had to understand how do you look at multiple levels of learning? How do you look at different styles of learning? How do you look at multiple levels of planning, assessment? There was a whole lot of things that needed to be done and structured. I would definitely say, as a person who's gone through the process, that it needs a whole lot of planning, but it is also very empowering for children, and it is very natural in the process.
Thank you, sir.
It sort of breaks that we have, right?
Yes.
Can you suggest some ways to engage vertical age groups?
I couldn't get your voice.
Can you suggest some ways to engage students who are part of a vertical age group classroom?
So I think that's also part of a learning process, to say that in vertical age group, there are different styles of facilitating also. It is not that one teacher is catering to different levels. They are also learning from each you do, which is for the group. And then there are breakout groups where children work and they also learn from each other. So it is not a must that the children have to learn only from the teacher. So these are little styles, but definitely it makes a lot of, it's very helpful when the teacher knows the levels of children and the interests, their aptitudes, in order to group them. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So peer learning and
yes, absolutely.
Neeraja, do you have the next question?
Yes, in fact, I do. So this is a question from Suman Bhattacharya. Problem when student is physically present in class but mentally absent. So I feel that Sumanji wants to really reflect on this problem and maybe perform an action research. So how would how would the teacher go about solving this if this is a problem?
Yeah, so as a facilitator of action research, I would ask this teacher first, how do you know that the student is only physically present and mentally absent? So this is, having identified this as a problem, I am now entering the second step, which is analyzing the problem. So analyzing the problem in that stage, we go deep into understanding it. So I would ask questions like, how do you know? I would ask, how many of your students are physically present but mentally absent? And how many are both physically and mentally present? And how many are always in this category, or does it vary, depending on the subject, the time of day, your mood, the way you are, what does it depend on? So as I ask questions like this, very often the problem, because now it is opening up. They are now beginning to understand the problem more deeply. So then the teacher will come up with ways of, maybe I can do this to see, actually gauge whether my student is physically and mentally present. So first they begin to doubt their premise, which is a very good thing to do. And then they start examining, exploring. And that's, action research is then you have to identify strategies. So if we could discuss it all in 5 minutes, it's very simple, right? It's not. So then they have to actually go through the whole process. That's as much as I can answer.
Yeah, thank you. I guess what I get from your answer is always like sharing, maybe actually just communicating with another teacher or your mentor about a problem that is, as you said, a burning issue that they're facing. And then opening up about it, and slowly, I guess, they will get into this practice of at least opening up about the burning issue and slowly then addressing it with the help of a mentor. Okay, thank you. Apurva, do you have the next question?
Yes, yes, I do. So Mr. Samir Khan is asking us, some children always try to divert the teaching and learning process. How do you reflect on that?
So again, the question was, some children try to divert the teaching learning process. How does a teacher deal with that? Begin by analyzing that problem. I would say, how do you know that these children are only bent on diverting the teaching learning process? You know, quite often that is an interpretation which the teacher has made. And it could be something much deeper in those children's minds. And the teacher has, because the teacher has got an agenda, I have to cover this today. So the teacher is saying anything which comes in the way of that as an interference. This child is not letting me, you know. That child wants something. What does a child want? Maybe the teacher needs to find that out first. And so in analyzing the action research problem, we go into that and we try to explore that. And there are very interesting, if you read Teaching Trails, Learning Trails, of how teachers actually unearthed something much deeper. And they found their assumption, they were quite mistaken in their assumption, with no ill intention. They just happened to make the wrong assumption.
So it's important to go into the reasons of why this must be happening.
It is important.
Child's point of view.
It is important to first examine whether one is really interpreting that correctly. One may not be right. I always give the example of when a teacher is teaching, I fall into this trap. After so many decades of teaching, I fall into the same trap. When I'm teaching, and I find that there are many who are listening to me very animatedly, and there are some who are just sitting like this, very quiet. All my attention goes to the one who's quiet, because I think that one is not listening. That one is not participating. So participation, I seem to define as voluble, verbal, which it need not be. That child may be participating very much through the mind. Not everyone talks. So the trap a teacher can get into is to try to enroll everyone into talking. It doesn't mean, participation need not mean verbal participation.
So everybody has their own way of reacting to what is going on.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Nilesh?
Yes. So, in fact, this is a question that has come from a school administrator or a principal. And the question is, if I, as a principal, want to get my fellow teachers or the teachers in the school to get motivated to do a reflective practice, what can be the tips that you can give us?
So I can't give you tips. I would say this is a huge challenge for a school management to motivate their teachers to bring in reflective practice into their school. This is an action research problem, actually, for the management. The management has to crack this as an action research problem, because each teacher will have different obstacles, different challenges. There is no one formula which fits all. So actually, they would have to go into this and see how to engage with different teachers and convince them of the value of reflection and reflective practice. One way is to begin by reading, talking to other teachers who've done it. You've heard some teachers today. Talk to others who've done it. Get teachers to talk to them, because anything coming from the management is often viewed with suspicion. That, oh, they're telling us to do it. We have to do it. So don't make it a have to. So why don't you talk to someone else? When we get inquiries in Thinking Teacher from teachers who say, why should I do this reflective writing course? We don't try to convince them. We say, can we connect you to those who've done it? Why don't you talk to them? You are always more convinced from a peer. Children, just like children learn better from their peers, teachers are more convinced by their colleagues than from the management.
I want to add to that, if I may, because we've been doing that, So we've been sharing the results of Neja's course, and that was a great starting point for us. Get every teacher enrolled into the course, because then the onus of getting teachers aware of what is reflective thinking is not on us, but on Neja. So I think that's a great starting point, personally. Yeah.
Thank you, Anissa. Anyone else wants to add? Vicky or Prabha, would you like to add anything? Please feel free. I don't have to handle all the questions. Doesn't look like. Go ahead, Neeraja. They will. Or Apurva.
I think I would like to.
Yeah.
Please
go ahead, Prabha. Prabha, go ahead.
No, I would just like to add about the whole. I don't know if you're able to hear me because I think internet connection is unstable. Is what the message came
Keep
to
the
me.
video off. No
but
problem.
what I would like to add is, like, for example, when see what Sudha was talking about. No, I was actually in a sense the other end of what Sudha was doing. I had the receiving end, to so to say. Because it was a burn issue. So the whole thing is also the shifts that can be made. That is very important. The reflective practice, which results in shifts that has been made in this for all of us to think about, and all those things. I think that is what came to my mind when Sudha was talking about, like, because it happened a few years back, and I was there with Sudha, along with Sudha, in that, although I was not part of the reflective action research. But the results of the action research we could see, that is what I wanted to share, because it's not just one person's action research. It is the result of the action research kind of changes the whole, what do I say, the setup, the change that has been made to the whole thing. So it's kind of a domino effect that you see.
Yes.
That is what I wanted to add to the reflective practice, the domino effect that you say. Because like one person changes, like even if only one person, like in Anissa's case, maybe she did this one. But because Anissa did that, what happens is that she kind of influences the others to take it up. And that is one way. And also the whole, how the certain things, how people start thinking in a different way because of that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your inputs, Prabha. And I feel it's again it's a challenge. I can see that many people are sharing that it as an administrator, it's a challenge to get teachers involved and really make everyone to be a part of this journey of reflective practices. But I guess we need to start somewhere, and a slow, we may start slow, but over time it will gain that momentum, and slowly more people will join this movement of reflecting on your teaching. Apurva, do you have the next question?
Yes, I do. Again, I'm going to club two questions. It's about storytelling. One question was, what is the importance of storytelling? And another connected question was that how will you handle the students when storytelling has both positivism and negativism? I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but perhaps you.
Yeah, even I don't understand what the positivism and negativism mean. But importance of storytelling, I would like to throw the question back to the questioner. No matter what your age, if somebody tells you, I'm going to tell you a story, won't you sit up immediately? Say, yes, please tell me. I will. I'm 62, and if you tell me you're going to tell me a story, I'll say, yes, please, I'd love to hear it. So storytelling, and we are a land of storytellers. We don't need to be convinced of the power of storytelling. Storytelling is an ancient art in India, and everyone loves to hear a good story. So storytelling is powerful. There is no need to even debate. There's no question about it. Of course, and the better a storyteller you are, the more impactful you will be. Sudha, would you like to say you're a storyteller yourself?
Yeah, I had to add in because I think from my experience, when you teach concepts through stories, you've actually expanded the worldview of the child. Imagination, which usually takes a beating when there is so much of focus in only the deliverables. I think what you leave the child by doing a story is far more long lasting than what you would have transferred through a knowledge. So the power of story, at least I'll vouch for it.
Absolutely.
Yes, totally. I couldn't agree more. I think from folklore to movies, the impact of storytelling is everywhere around us. And I think in India, the art of using stories to convey a message and to teach different morals to concepts has been also explored sufficiently. So thank you for that. Neeraja?
Yes, I have the next question, and the next question is by K. Vimala, and the question is: should the action research process be an kind of everyday routine practice for a teacher?
So I would say reflection should be part of your everyday practice. I don't like the word routine because routine sounds mechanical, and the minute you're mechanical, you're not reflective. So I'd say reflection should definitely be part of your everyday practice. Action research, one can't do it all the time, but one can certainly use it for the most burning issue. And because action research, although it can be done during the day, like Sudha was describing, documenting it, you have to take time out. And documenting is actually, you add value because you're then thinking about thinking, which is what reflection is all about. You've not just done the action research. Donald Shawn, who's written the book, The Reflective Practitioner, he calls it reflection on reflection in action. So when you did the action research, you were reflecting. And now when you're writing, you're reflecting on that. So that has great value. But this takes time. So you cannot obviously be doing action research all the time, every day as a teacher. You can't. But that's why we have these different techniques. I shared 3 with you. There are many ways of bringing in reflective practice: journaling, diary writing. In fact, one of the stories in our book is about how staff meetings are used as reflective spaces. So how schools can use, instead of staff meetings are usually very functional. Okay, what are the marks of this child in that class? Who has to be detained? Who has to be promoted? And when is it a holiday? By when should you submit report card? It's very functional. But actually staff meetings can be real reflective spaces. One of the stories in the book describes that. So we have to find that kind of how to institutionalize the process without taxing students or teachers any more than they are already.
Okay, thank you so much. I actually have a question for you. And since you've worked, and I guess this is the last question of the webinar, since you've worked with many teachers and different teachers who are teaching, various ages, age students, they're teaching various subjects, and you have talked to them about reflective practices, can you share one teacher's journey which is very close to your heart, like somebody who you felt did so well using these reflective practices?
I can. You'll have to give me at least 5 minutes for that because
Sure,
it's a
sure.
story.
Yes, again, it's a story, so I'm sure that it's going to really
story. And
help.
that teacher, she was my first action researcher. She's probably listening in right now on YouTube. So she is still working in this residential school in Andhra Pradesh. And she was already a senior citizen when I met her. And she had been in that residential school, she had been dining hall manager and needlework teacher to grades 4 and 5. And in that school, grades 4 and 5 are combined. So from being a needlework teacher and dining hall manager, because she was a graduate in science, the principal invited her to be the EVS teacher to that class. So she became EVS teacher, and to her disadvantage, she stepped into the shoes of a very popular EVS teacher who happened to leave the school. So you know how it is, children, not only children, adults, once you've been taught in a certain way, you expect to be taught in the same way by the next person. Not only that, these children had stereotyped her as grandma, she can take care of dining hall, she can teach needlework, she can't teach us EVS. So they told her, Akka, you can't teach EVS, Akka. You can teach needlework, Akka. To top that, she's a very soft person. She didn't want to be firm and strict with the children. She wanted them to realize the need for discipline. So when she began teaching, it was a huge challenge for her just to manage her class. When I observed her first class, I found that she was having a lot of trouble because the children were nicely taking her for a ride. And the same children in their math class were models of good behavior because that teacher stood no nonsense. She was a no nonsense teacher. So you know how children are, they know exactly whom to wag their tails with. So they took this teacher for a ride. And she was very soft and gentle, and she tried to tell them, okay, settle down, but then it didn't happen. So when she said, I want to do action research, I said, please identify your action research problem. So she said, to make EVS vibrant and get all the children engaged with EVS. I said, okay. Then I said, okay, let's analyze it. So when we started analyzing, I said, how many are engaged? How many are not engaged? How do you know they're not engaged? Why do you think they're not engaged? Within 10 minutes, she said, no, Neeraja, that's not my problem. I said, okay, what's your problem? She said, it's classroom management. So I said, bingo, I could see that was the problem. So then I said, okay, what do you want to do about that? So she said, I really don't know how to deal with these kids. I mean, I'm a grandmother. I'm able to teach my grandchildren one-on-one. But this class, I'm finding it very tough. So I said, what is your next topic? She said, in EVS, I have to teach Panchayati Raj. So I said, okay, that's great. Now, why don't we combine that? You can teach Panchayati Raj by creating a village in your school, telling your class that they are a village, and tell them they have to elect Panchayat and a Sarpanch, and give that Sarpanch and Panchayat the job of managing the class. So you've killed two birds with one stone. You've taught them Panchayati Raj, you managed your class. She was delighted with the idea and she tried it, and the children were delighted because now everybody wanted to be Sarpanch. So she said, we'll have weekly elections. We'll change the Panchayat every week. But she made one mistake, which was, she said, I'm also a villager. She let go of all control. So pretty soon there was chaos because the punishments to children. And she didn't intervene because she was a villager. So while on the surface, it seemed like there was a lot of discipline, there was undercurrents of a lot of tension and hurt and children getting back, saying, today you are Sarpanch, you're giving me this punishment. Hold on, next week when I'm Sarpanch, I give you a worse punishment. So that was the underlying game happening. So I used to go once a month to the school. When I went next month, this came to the surface. So now she said, I'm a little hurt by what's happening with the children. I want to see how to deal with this. So then she put a poll to the children and said, do you want to continue with Panchayat? So now she was in a worse dilemma. 50% said they want, 50% said they don't want. So not only was she in a dilemma, I too was in a dilemma. So I came away and I realized my mistake because I had given a Neeraja solution to a teacher who should have come up with her solution. That my learning was that as a facilitator, I should not give solutions. I should only facilitate. Because Neeraja would never have relinquished all control. I would have kept some control. Because I know, children they're not going to be all the time wise and fair. So now I came back and then I thought about it and I did some reading. And I said, this action research is going through the doorway of problem. Whereas she's a lady with many strengths. In fact, her strength was, I could see that not one child was scared of her. Every child was totally comfortable with her. And second, as a grandmother, she had been very successful in teaching her grandchildren one-on-one. So I turned around to her and I said, why don't you use these strengths? She said, but that's exactly the problem. Nobody is scared of me. I said, no, that's not a problem. That's your strength. And you are good one-on-one. So why don't you use that? Because it has worked. So being a residential school, she started engaging with children one-on-one outside school hours. She forged a bond with them. And in a dramatically short time, there was such a turnaround that her action research problem changed from classroom management back to her original, which was how to make EVS engaging. And today she's such a popular teacher that the children want her to be promoted with them when she goes to the next grade. The same children who told her, Akka, you can't teach EVS, they love her classes.
Really interesting story, and thank you for sharing
this
that.
on our website. That was the link I gave in one of the slides. This is the research paper which is on our website.
Okay. No, thank you for really sharing that, because it again re-illustrates the importance of communication amongst teachers, and through this webinar series we are hoping to build a community of teachers that share their difficulties and also help each other to come up with solutions for their burning issues. Again, as I said, that was our last question. So thank you again, the entire team, Neeraja, Prabha, Sudha, Vicky, Anissa, everybody. Thank you for joining us today and, sharing your experiences. And I'm sure that it has inspired more teachers to start reflecting on their teaching.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So to everyone else, all our viewers, I just want to, give a little insight about our next session. This is by Dr. Gareth Price, and he's going to talk about inquiry. His title is You Say Inquiry, I Say What. So thank you for joining us today. We will definitely meet you for our 5th webinar next week. I know there are a couple of questions being asked in the chat box regarding feedback link. You will get the feedback link in your email, just as you get any other email from us regarding this webinar series. We will also be communicating feedback link in the email itself. Thank you for watching, and do join us for our next webinar, which is on 10th October, which is by Dr. Gareth Price regarding inquiry. And he's not only talking about scientific inquiry, he's going to talk broadly about inquiry in any subject. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.